Hey, Larken Rose here, and I want to address something that I've mentioned here and there in other videos, but I wanted one brief video that's just focused on this, which is something I see a fair number of pro-freedom people doing, which is weirdly depressing and stressful and completely counterproductive. And I understand why people do this, why some people do this, but I want to see if I can talk people into not doing this, because it's ridiculous and it doesn't help at all. And that is when people think that because it's been so long that there have been a bunch of nasty parasites in power who they do scheme and they do conspire and they do lots of like unthinkably nasty things. But some people get it in their heads that whatever happens, it must have been part of the plan of these nasty, like superhuman, brilliant, scheming people. And that is not the case. It was never the case. It used to be closer to the case, like they would play a whole lot of games and put on a whole lot of shows. And the thing is, I understand being suspicious and cautious, because there's a whole lot of different tricks that they're going to use and that they have used in the past that are worth looking out for. And I've used before the analogy of, if you're playing chess against somebody who you know is pretty good at it, and it looks like they did a stupid move, and it's like, well, you just opened yourself up to a devastating response from me, it's totally worth pausing and going, is this a trap? Is there something I'm not seeing? Like, there's an obvious thing for me to do, but I should pause and look around and figure out maybe there's some reason I shouldn't do that. Maybe the other person is totally aware of the obvious thing I could do, but there's a reason they actually want me to do that. And there's a reason they would actually benefit from that. So I'm going to be like cautious and study the board for a while. Yeah, good idea. I'm all in favor of people doing that. What I'm not in favor of is people just deciding that no matter what happens, oh, it must have been part of their master plan. Especially today, that just kind of becomes ridiculous, because there's so many indications that their propaganda machine is just falling apart at the seams in just ridiculous and obvious ways. And if we're so expecting to lose and expecting to be tricked and thinking as if we're up against omniscient and omnipotent people who know everything and control everything and everything that happens is part of their plan, then we just, hide in a corner and accomplish nothing. And even when there's actually like successes and huge successes, we're all going to be like terrified and like, no, I don't believe that we're making any progress. And I don't believe that this good thing is happening and that good thing is happening. And to switch from a chess analogy to a football analogy, yeah, there's lots of trick plays in football where we're going to make it look like we're doing this, but really we're going this way, and it's worth looking out for them. But if the quarterback backs up, trips over his own feet, stumbles, falls, drops the ball, and it rolls 20 feet behind him, it probably isn't a trick. He probably just screwed up. Go dive on the ball. Don't sit there and go, no, they can't get me with this trick. I'm going to sit here and wait for them to go pick the ball up because I think this is some clever scheme on their part. So I wanted to run down a list of things that, no matter how you spin it, these are not clever schemes. These are not indications that they're winning or that they're all-knowing and all-powerful. They're indications that their game is completely falling apart, to the point that even a bunch of the normal people who just sort of went along before and didn't question things, even a bunch of them are like, this is messed up. This is screwed up. Something's like fundamentally horribly wrong here. So first of all, the main battle here is the battle of ideas, the battle of propaganda and information and what they convey. They have completely lost control over that. The what I always refer to as the mainstream media isn't the mainstream media anymore. Like CNN and all the networks of just lapdog, pathetically dishonest, untrustworthy puppets of the establishment, nobody's watching them anymore. I mean, it isn't nobody, But it's getting there. It's getting close to nobody. And random people like Joe Rogan and Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore, and like there's a bunch of people who now are just started out as just some guy. And, you know, maybe he was a little bit well known over here or over there for one reason or another, but just some guy who now has more viewers than like CNN. And even Tucker Carlson, like when Fox tossed him, and he was their most watched show, which made that a particularly weird move. And now he's doing fine. He has a gazillion views all over the place. And so, first of all, the establishment that's out there saying, no, trust, the president's good and you can trust them, and democracy and the process, and nobody's listening to them. Nobody believes them. Everybody thinks they're lying. Well, again, I'm slightly exaggerating. It isn't really everybody. There are still some people who still, for some weird reason, think CNN is something other than just a bunch of really bad liars. Like, they're not even good at it anymore. But some people then jump to the conclusion that, oh, it means everybody with an audience is a shill. And some people will say exactly that. I've had some people say that of me because of my, you know, relatively tiny audience. But because it's in the thousands of people or tens of thousands or whatever, they'll say, ew, you must be a shill and a sellout because they wouldn't let you have an audience if you weren't, like, secretly part of their... And they say that about Russell Brand, and they say that about Joe Rogan, and they say that about everybody. But at some point, that becomes ridiculous. Like, I'm going to use the example of Russell Brand first. Well, I mean, in my case, to pretend that, yeah, I'm secretly with the cabal, and I'm trying to spread... Like, how would that help them? Yeah, I'm secretly on their payroll. And, like, they don't pay very well because I've been broke kind of forever. But if I'm secretly on their payroll, what am I accomplishing? For literally 27 years now, I've advocated a stateless society, pointed out that all government, all authoritarianism is illegitimate and bogus, and humanity needs to escape that lie. Yeah, but that was all part of their plan to do what? Like, what am I supposed to suddenly do now because I'm a shill for the establishment? Like, what would it accomplish? Even if I did suddenly turn around and go, all my loyal followers, you will now believe in government and do as you're told. Like, that would work? Like, if this whole time I was just pretending to be a voluntarist, even when I'm, like, sitting in prison for a year, I'm super deep undercover. To accomplish what? Like, if you know how chess works or you know how football works, and the quarterback just fell over backwards and fumbled 20 yards backward, oh, it's a trick. To do what? Like, there has to be something they accomplish by way of these tricks. And if I use even Russell Brand as an example, who's out there saying we need to get, you know, he isn't yet a voluntarist, although I don't think it would take a whole lot to get him there. But he's talking about how, yeah, I don't trust either party. They're both just, you know, establishment, you know, lapdogs for the one ruling class and the people controlling this whole thing, and don't believe any of them, don't trust any of them, and he wants it to be local, and he talks about individual freedom and all that stuff. In order to what? If you think he's secretly a shill, well, what's he going to do to suddenly demonstrate that? Like, he has been devastating for a whole lot of, especially liberals, because he sort of came from the left, devastating to the impression that a bunch of liberals have about government. Same thing with Jimmy Dore, who's still totally a statist, but he's, like, honest enough that he dared to come out and say, this establishment, this administration, the Bidens, they're just crooked warmongering power-happy psychos. And, like, I'm not going to just pretend they're not because I'm choosing teams between two sets of lying crooks. A lot of people are recognizing that now and saying it, and some of them have audiences and some of them don't. But, like, what's the conniving secret plan? Because he's really a shill, and then he's going to do what? Like, all these people are doing, and not even the ones who are voluntarists, but all they're doing is encouraging people to doubt stuff and question stuff and not trust the establishment. And I've seen some pro-freedom people say, well, it's because they want a revolution, and that way they can bring in that new world order. And no, you need to understand the game enough to know what they are and aren't capable of. And I don't mean they're not evil enough to try that. They're evil enough to do absolutely anything. They're just not competent enough to do anything. So the idea that, yeah, we want a revolution because then we can bring the UN in. You think if the American people, like, had a revolution and overthrew Washington, D.C., and a bunch of the light blue stupid helmets came marching in from the UN, now we're in charge, people would go, oh, goody, like they've just gunned them down. There's a lot of conservatives and rednecks and a whole bunch of different kinds of people, you know, the vast majority of whom are still statists to one degree or another, who they don't even like their domestic rulers. They're not going to put up with a foreign invasion. I've talked about that before, so I'm not going to go down that tangent at the moment. But the whole idea of they want a revolution, no, they stinking don't. They're scared out of their wits about the idea of resistance. That's why they had to point at that stupid little frat party of January 6th and blow that so ridiculously out of proportion. This was a coup. Yeah, some people casually basically taking an unscheduled tour of the Capitol building. It wasn't a coup. They weren't even armed. They weren't trying to seize power. Like, does anybody even pretend to imagine that they were going to go in there and take over the government? Look, and suddenly all the agencies and enforcers are going to go, oh, I guess the guy with the weird buffalo hat's now in charge. We'll just do whatever he says. Like, that's even beyond delusional. That's literally insane to pretend that any of them were thinking there was the slightest chance in hell of seizing power. It was a stupid tantrum protest over like what they imagined to be, you're stealing the election from our political savior. They're all thinking within the same template. They're all statists. They're all playing the same stupid game that gives us one stupid puppet after another, robbing people and stomping on us. And it's a puppet that was already there. Like, it's not like he's our savior. If only he could get in there. He did get in there. He was in there for 4 years. And he pardoned all those prisoners of the victimless crimes. Oh, wait. No, he didn't. He could have unilaterally as president, but he didn't. But at least he declassified all the documents about JFK and 9/11. Oh, no, he didn't. He could have unilaterally, but he didn't. But at least he, did some warmongering and didn't do some other warmongering. Yay, our savior. He wasn't anything. The idea that the deep state is terrified of Trump is ridiculous. It's a bunch of puppets having little tantrums at each other. Yeah, there's a bunch of the puppets that don't like the Trump puppet. Who cares? They're all part of the puppet show. But the idea that January 6th was some actually significant thing, they just keep harping on that in those ridiculous hearings. And then stuff comes out and Joe Rogan talks about it and Tucker Carlson talks about it and shows video of they're literally just being led in and shown around by like Capitol Police and stuff. It's not like violent confrontation. They're just kind of strolling around the halls. Whoop-de-friggin-do. The fact that that stupid thing is making the politicians flip out like this is a threat to our democracy. This was a coup. This was an attempt to overthrow. Like, if that scared you, imagine how much they'd be peeing themselves if there was actually a group of people who went into the Capitol with the intention of actually tearing down the government. Because that's not what those twits were doing. Like, I'm not at all on their side. They just wanted a different clown on the throne. But they weren't doing anything. They weren't a threat to anything. And yet you see how terrified the political parasites were of that giant nothing burger. And we're pretending that's a coup. That's not them being in control. That's them trying to spin something. And yeah, they totally had infiltrators and they tried to, like, okay, we're going to let this happen so we can try to spin it into a coup. But it's laughably stupid to the point that the vast majority of people, and I think this is Republican and Democrats, are like, yeah, whatever, that thing wasn't a big deal. It's just a stupid thing that happened. It was like there was zero chance of it. Now our new emperor is weird guy with a painted face and a buffalo hat. Like, no, nobody, including him, thought that was going to happen. Thought there was the slightest chance in hell of that happening. It wasn't a coup. It wasn't anything. And the fact that they had to try to spin that as something serious is one example of literally 100 I could give. I'm trying to keep this video sort of short. Where they try to blow things out of proportion and it just becomes laughably stupid propaganda because all the normal people are like, we don't care about that. Like, we just think that was a dumb little tantrum. Even the people who are like, they shouldn't have done that, but whoop-de-doo. You know, it's stupid. And so there's so many indications that they are not nearly the propaganda masterminds they have been in the past. You know, the days of Edward Bernays and his propaganda are over. Now you have a bunch of mostly bumbling idiots. They'll still try to spin things. They'll still do the fear-mongering. They're still trying. They're still making an attempt, but they're failing all over the place. And this was a thing I said at the beginning of the COVID just debacle. I don't even know what to call that. Not calling it a pandemic because it literally had nothing to do with that. It was a government grab of power that was just utterly ridiculous. And at the beginning, I did the thing of saying, this is ridiculous. They're lying all over the place, like really obvious lies. And some people are like, well, I hear there's some disease out there and I'm not sure how bad it is. But it was pretty early on that I immediately said, yeah, whatever it is, I don't nearly believe them. But pretty early on, I was like, they all know they're lying. Well, now it's coming out, them on record going, yeah, we totally know we're lying about like all of it. And now one piece at a time, even the mainstream, it isn't mainstream anymore, has to admit, it turns out, and it also turns out that, and now that we've done a study, we found out one by one, they admit literally every single thing that I and a bunch of other people were saying at the beginning about the ridiculousness and uselessness of the shutdowns and the social distancing and the masks and their claims about mortality rates were ridiculous, and they're just pretending that natural immunity isn't a thing anymore. A huge list of things that since then they've had to go, turns out. And at the beginning I was saying, all of this is going to come out. They can scare people and lie their asses off at the moment, but all of these lies in the long run are going to collapse. Now they can grab their short-term profits, which they did, like tens of billions of dollars. But that is not the sign of an empire that's in control. That's the sign of an incompetent empire falling apart and a bunch of greedy little parasites in it that are like grabbing what they can as fast as they can before the game falls over. And so when their lies are that bad, and at the beginning I was saying, is there something more clever here? Because this looks astonishingly stupid. And the fact that people are going to fall for it and go along with it right now doesn't change the fact that in the long run, nobody trusts them anymore. And then they came out and said, well, no, disinformation and misinformation. And now there's like public lawsuits showing that government, 100% illegally and unconstitutionally, for those of you who still think that makes any stinking difference, went and tried to influence and just do censorship all over the place. Well, we're just going to make sure that nobody can say anything we disagree with. Only that got out all over the place, and people with huge audiences are saying, why are you censoring everybody? So not only did the message still end up getting out, but the fact that they just lied their butts off to try to censor it got out, which just makes them look even worse. In the long run, do these seem to you like signs that they're in control and this was all part of their plan? And one of the most just laughable things, like all of this hinges, like I've only talked about for, constantly for 27 years, all of this hinges on the belief in authority. and on the people imagining legitimacy to the ruling class. In other words, yeah, they really have the right to rule us. They're a legitimate government. They're a democratically elected constitutional republic that we need for a civilized society, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. The people have to actually believe that their leaders are something other than completely corrupt, bumbling idiots. Well, how good a job have they been at keeping up that facade? Do they have a charismatic leader that the vast majority of people just adore and cheer for, and not only proudly obey, but like condemn anybody who doesn't? No, they have a list of corrupt, incoherent, senile imbeciles being like indicting each other all over the place, getting caught doing all sorts of corruption stuff all over the place, to the point that even the mainstream media that drags their feet as long as they possibly can before they have to admit something so that they don't lose their very last viewer who just goes, if you're just pretending this isn't happening, then we're not going to watch you anymore. They've already lost a huge number of viewers just from the levels of ridiculousness they've already done. Like the whole Hunter Biden thing. Just literally, there's just video of him committing crime after crime after crime. And they found the laptop. First of all, if they're all powerful and all knowing, maybe don't leave laptops around with like tons of incriminating stuff on them. Like, you absolute idiot. But so they do all this and they get caught. And then not only does it come out anyway, but it comes out that the media was all lying about it to cover it up. And the DOJ and the IRS were told, yeah, just kind of don't look into that corruption because that's the first family. They're basically royalty. Just let them get away with that. And then that comes out. Like, this is not what it looks like when an empire is actually in control of the message and in control of what the people think. At all. Nobody gives a crap about any of the candidates. Even Trump, the people who supported Trump, they weren't rah-rah-rahing because he's an awesome, charismatic person. They were literally rah-rah-rahing because, one, he wasn't Hillary, and then he wasn't Biden, and two, he dared to be, like, blunt to the point of being rude about other politicians. That's what they found refreshing. Now, the fact that he's another slimeball lying crook who doesn't give a crap about anybody but himself, a lot of people, like, tried really hard to not recognize that obvious truth because they wanted a political savior. Sadly, people do that a lot. But if this spectacle represents the system being under control and everything is within their plan, what do you think it would look like if they didn't have control? And that's the thing, is so many freedom people, supposedly pro-freedom people, I mean, they are pro-freedom. They just kind of don't understand the game going on. But everything that happens, this is planned, that's planned too. It's all in their plan. It's like, how many yards backwards does the quarterback have to run chasing the fumbled ball until he kicks it out of the end zone and gets a safety on himself single-handedly? Are you still going to go, oh, it was just a trick? Just at what point is their bumbling stupidity going to make you think, maybe they're not all the way all-knowing and all-powerful, and they just made enemies out of millions of people who a few years ago never questioned this stuff, never thought about this stuff, would never in a million years like disobey or think of disobeying the law. And they made a bunch of those people go, yeah, we're just not going to shut down. That was happening everywhere. And, a lot of people went along with it because, a lot of people are indoctrinated, but a bunch of people didn't, including like New Jersey and New York and California, and then of course Texas and here in Arizona. And like, it taught a bunch of people how to say, you're just corrupt, lying scumbags. We're not going along with this. And that's the dumbest thing a tyrant could ever do. And they were doing that all over the place. And they're still doing that. They're still trying to push for things. Like, they backed off that lie, and that lie is just crumbling and falling apart. Now you have two desperate parties that were so used to having power that they think they can get away with running literally babbling idiots. senile, stumbling, incoherent morons. And now we have Mitch McConnell, that weird clip of him in mid-sentence, his brain just locked up. I don't know if he had literally a stroke or a seizure. I haven't looked into it because I don't care. He's a puppet. He's an evil piece of crap too, like the rest of them, so I couldn't possibly care less what happens to him, and I couldn't possibly care less what he has to say, because no word that ever comes out of his mouth has anything to do with telling people the truth. Every bit of his propaganda, from the Republicans, from the Democrats, and from the lapdog media, all of it is their BS. But you'd think if they were masters of the BS, first of all, most people wouldn't know it was BS. And second of all, their puppets wouldn't be stammering and incapable of making a complete sentence and lose their frickin' minds on live TV and just turn into a blank zombie, or constantly get on tape incriminating himself like Trump, just the complete imbecile that he is. And even the fact that like a bunch of the indictments and stuff they're going after him for are kind of dumb and who cares? And most people are like, this is duh. He's probably done plenty of stuff way worse than that, and so did the Bidens, and so did the Clintons, and so is everybody in there. Like, if everybody in D.C. was actually prosecuted for the crimes that they did, D.C. would look like the movie I Am Legend. There would be nobody in it. They're all a bunch of lying crooks. And people sort of instinctively knew that before. Well, now they specifically know it, like about every single one. Oh, the Pelosi's totally openly doing insider trading, getting caught all over the place, floundering around. Hunter Biden getting caught doing these things, and of course his dad was involved. Trump getting caught every 5 minutes, incriminating himself as much as humanly possible, even if it's for stupid stuff. For any pro-freedom people to be watching this show and still go, yep, they have it all under control. All of this is part of their plan. Just, it's so discouraging to see people that used to losing that they can't even notice when they're winning. They can't even notice when there's progress. And when you have people like Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore, bailing out of the left-leaning establishment, Jimmy Dore is still totally a statist and totally a leftist, but he's turning around and going, not this establishment is horrible. And Russell Brand is actually like escaping the entire mindset and headed towards freedom. And Tucker Carlson, who the number one show, only he decided maybe I shouldn't be a cheerleader for warmongering constantly. Well, then you're getting out of here. Like, I don't know the exact reasons why Fox fired him, but he's aiming towards, aiming away from the usual authoritarian crap too. I don't know if he'll ever get there. The fact that you have shows where Russell Brand is talking to Tucker Carlson and they have more in common with each other than with anyone in either of the two major political parties. If you can't recognize that as a good sign and as actual progress, and that was not part of the plan of the people in control, and that the people in control are losing control, what would it actually take? And I've seen some people come right out and say, well, if anybody has any audience of any size, then don't trust them because they were allowed to have that audience by the machine. Like people really do, some people not knowing how the game works really do imagine them to be all powerful. Like, okay, here I am babbling what I've been babbling for 27 years. I have my YouTube channel. I've had a few videos taken down. They, the algorithms stomp on me here and on Facebook and in kind of predictable ways. I'm still here. I haven't been killed. Would be pretty easy to kill me. But they didn't. There's a whole lot of people who are voluntarists who are out there saying what they think. And they haven't been killed or arrested. Like, this isn't North Korea. As much as the people in power wish they had that power, including literally Trump saying on tape how much he admires the dictator of North Korea and how much he wishes his people would respond that way. Just, wow, you idiot. But we're saying stuff. You can say stuff. I can say stuff. Yeah, the control freaks are in a panic and they're trying to silence it where they can. And then new platforms appear, and which reminds me, I got to get on Rumble and, ride that for a while and see if it collapses and gets taken over. But these things are being said. The discussion is happening. And as of today, the movie The Jones Plantation is now for sale. Why do I bring that up? Well, first of all, because I want people to see the movie. But it's actually relevant to the discussion. It's jonesplantationfilm.com is where you can buy it now. Last I checked, it was finally up and running. So people can get it there. If that becomes huge and a topic of discussion, how many people, and it won't be zero, how many people are going to go, now I'm starting to think that maybe Larken is secretly a shill, because this wouldn't have gotten that attention if they didn't allow it to. And I've seen a bunch of people say that about Sound of Freedom. Now, you can question the people behind it, and, I'm sure almost everyone involved is a statist, because almost everybody everywhere is a statist. But this immediately assuming everything must be by the plan, it's kind of ridiculous. So how many people, if the Jones Plantation does well, and we get, Russell Brand to mention it, Joe Rogan to mention it, and Jimmy Dore to mention it, and a bunch of other people to mention it, and they're talking about it, and a bunch of people are seeing it, having discussions about it and debates about it, how many people are going to go, well, this is part of their secret plan too? If so, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're alienating people who are coming to your side. And this is a momentous occasion to have the technology and the opportunity where people with huge audiences are starting to listen. Joe Rogan has had, Dave Smith on. He's had Michael Malice has been on a number of shows, including Jimmy Dore. So you have an anarcho-capitalist on a total leftist show. It's becoming part of the discussion. Do you really think that was part of the plan of the people in power? Yeah, we want to make sure that people are openly talking about the idea of not having a ruling class. That is the last thing in the world they ever want anybody to hear about at all, much less be having reasonable discussions about. And it was in my lifetime where there was nothing anywhere close to that in the public discourse, talking about a stateless society or anything of the sort. Nothing even close. Their game is falling apart. Anyway, I could go on and on because there's so many examples, on a daily basis, of their game just falling apart. Every 5 minutes, one of those stupid crooks, left or right, gets caught doing some ridiculous thing. And the mainstream media, they'll dive on it if it's Republicans, and they'll, try to censor it if it's Democrats, but then it gets out anyway. And it's just, don't be so careful that you're incapable of seeing progress and you're incapable of accepting good news, because this is becoming part of the discussion. And that's what I want the Jones Plantation to do, is throw that forward some more and make people start to have a discussion about the foundational nature of the system, the ruling classes, the political system, and all that, instead of just bickering over which of two crooked puppets you hate a little bit less than the other one. So, wow, it's amazing to see the shell shock in pro-freedom people who can't imagine winning. They can't imagine even progress. So everything that looks like, wow, some normal people out there with audiences are starting to say some stuff that sounds like us. Russell Brand has said a lot of things that are sounding in the direction of me and a bunch of other voluntarists. And the people are like, no, he's a shell. Because he once was dating the granddaughter of the uncle of a Rockefeller somewhere. He's a guy. He's a person. People can think things. They can say things. Judge them by their words and actions. Are his words and actions helping the establishment? No. Is there something he can say tomorrow that would suddenly help the establishment and, do a complete 180, or his followers going to go, no, we trust the system again, Russell, thank you for informing us? No. If I did that tomorrow, if I suddenly went full status tomorrow, would anybody believe me? No, I hope every single one of you would go, well, Larken either lost his marbles or was threatened, or it's AI or something, But that's stupid. Like, I hope you can recognize stupid status crap when you hear it, no matter where it comes from. So, stop trying to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. There is so much positive going on. Yeah, there's still warmongering and there's still authoritarian crap all over the place, and who knows what evil garbage they're going to try next. So I'm not saying we won, but I'm saying their game is absolutely falling apart, and it's moving in the right direction for the first time, like, ever. I don't just mean in the direction of this party instead of that one. I mean in the direction of people understanding freedom and away from statism and authoritarianism. And yeah, it's slow and it happens in steps, and, you know, a bunch of people are kind of sort of on our side, but not really all the way yet. But if you're so scared and you're so sure that everything is within their control, they know everything, they control everything, the result is going to be that you don't do anything. You hide in a corner like a terrified coward instead of going, well, this person seems to be open to it, let's talk to him. And if he's secretly a shill, is that a reason to not talk to him? Like, how would that harm anything? To reach out to people, and if it turns out, oh, you were putting on a show to try to get votes or something, whatever. Like, well, good thing we didn't, like, try to get the message out. If somebody with a big audience invites me on their show, I'm going on their show, even if they're totally a statist. And if they're totally a statist, I'm going to say things they don't like, and I'll probably candles in the dark their ass and get them into a position where they have to admit, oh, gee, I'm going to have to think about that. Why would I not? Why would I take the ridiculous approach of saying, well, I'm not going to have anything to do, I'm not even going to say a word to anybody who isn't already all the way on my side? So I'm going to end this with a funny little twist. If the people in power are super clever and super conspiring and super tricky, you know the main thing they'd be doing right now is trying to convince you to distrust anybody who sounds like they're heading in the direction of freedom, so that you don't reach out to them and you don't dare to talk about it and you don't dare to celebrate it when they actually go in our direction. You just hide in a corner, distrustful of everyone and everything, because no, they know everything. They can control everything. Resistance is futile. We will be assimilated. No, we stinkin' won't. And the ultimate irony is that is exactly what I would be doing if I was in charge of their propaganda machine and I was a soulless, evil tyrant. I'd be trying to make all the pro-freedom people too scared to talk to anybody and too scared to even trust each other or have a discussion or go out and just talk to normal human beings and see where they're at. And maybe nudge them in the right direction, like we teach in Candles in the Dark, like the Mirror's going to do, and I'm back to being able to work on that a bunch more. Like, this is not the time to give up. Sometimes, if it looks like the quarterback fumbled and ran 20 yards backwards, it's because he fumbled and ran 20 yards backwards. It's not because he tried to. It's not because there's some secret tricky plan. It's because they screwed up and they are losing control. Now is not the time to be silent and paranoid and not say anything and not reach out to anybody. Now is the time to push the monster over. So get out there and speak your mind, preferably in like an effective way. And spread these ideas to people, whether it's spreading the Jones Plantation movie or using Candles in the Dark or spreading whatever videos and ideas, or make your voice heard, because we can, and because a hell of a lot of people are listening now who weren't before, including some people who have huge audiences. And the thing those in power are most scared of is that you and me and a bunch of voluntarists are going to get the ear of a Russell Brand and a Joe Rogan and a them and take over the public discourse, the general discussion of humanity, because that's when we win. That is the last thing they want. So they will do anything, including trying to make you distrust everybody, to stop that. Don't fall for that and have your excuse be, but they know everything and they control everything. You're letting them control you if your paranoia makes you self-censor. So don't stinking do that. Yeehaw.